All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going on a seriously fascinating journey, starting deep inside the psychology of our own minds and zooming all the way out to systemic organizational leadership. Today, we are unpacking exactly how we hold ourselves back, how we can completely rewire our thinking, and ultimately, how we can take absolute control of our lives and our teams. I'm so pumped to guide you through this because honestly, the insights we're covering today are absolute game changers.
I want to hook you right out of the gate with a question that, well, it might sting just a little. Think about the last time you faced a massive opportunity, or maybe a really daunting challenge. Did you prep perfectly for it? Or did you miraculously find yourself binge-watching a show, doom-scrolling on your phone, or suddenly deciding that your kitchen desperately needed a deep clean? Seriously, why do we actively collaborate in our own defeat? Why do we self-sabotage right before the biggest moments of our lives?
The brilliant 20th psychologist Alfred Adler actually gives us a really piercing answer to this. He noted that we often select certain symptoms and develop them until they impress us as real obstacles. We essentially accept defeat in the interest of protection. What he means here is that our brains literally construct barricades. We actively embrace procrastination or illness or distractions to protect our fragile self-esteem from the sheer terror of giving our absolute best and still failing. Because think about it, if we fail because we didn't study, it's not a lack of ability, right? It's just a lack of effort. Our ego stays safe.
So here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to start with 1, the trap of self-handicapping. 2, fixed versus growth mindsets. And 3, excuses versus explanations. Then we'll scale things up a bit with 4, the extreme ownership principle. 5, fixing workplace friction. And finally, 6, taking charge of the outcome.
Starting with Part 1, the trap of self-handicapping. Self-handicapping is a deliberate, though usually unconscious, strategy. Researchers Stephen Berglas and Edward Jones point out that we actually reach out for impediments and exaggerate handicaps just to reduce our own personal responsibility for mediocrity. It all stems from a deep uncertainty about our own competence. When the healthy, normal path to self-esteem feels a little too arduous or risky, we basically create an excuse in advance. We embrace the obstacle so we can blame it rather than facing the terrifying possibility that maybe we just aren't good enough.
Moving into Part 2, fixed versus growth mindsets. Based on Dr. Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research, you can see how the brain literally takes one of 2 totally different paths. If you believe intelligence is static, what we call a fixed mindset, you hit a challenge, you instantly get defensive, you see effort as totally fruitless, and you plateau early. But if you believe intelligence can be developed, a growth mindset, you embrace that same challenge. You persist through setbacks, and you see effort as the necessary path to mastery. Basically, one path builds walls and the other builds ladders.
The crucial takeaway here is the stark contrast in the cardinal rules of these 2 worlds. In a fixed mindset, your prime directive is to look talented at all costs. You hide your deficiencies because having to work hard casts doubt on your natural, innate ability. But in a growth mindset, the rule is just to learn, learn, learn. You confront your deficiencies head-on and passionately. You don't rest on your laurels or your talent. You are constantly stretching yourself. Now, the bridge between these 2 mindsets is incredibly simple, but I'm telling you it is profoundly effective. It's the power of the word yet. Adding this single tiny word to your everyday vocabulary completely transforms failure. Instead of saying, I don't know how to do this, which sounds like a permanent flaw, you say, I don't know how to do this yet. It completely reframes a dead end into a temporary solvable hurdle. It focuses your brain on the future and that ever-present potential for growth and improvement.
Let's look at Part 3, excuses versus explanations.
Think about this. When you communicate a failure, are you giving an excuse or an explanation? Because there's a world of difference. An excuse shifts the cause outward. It's totally designed to protect your ego and reduce your responsibility. It sounds a lot like, hey, I'm just bad at being on time. Deal with it. An explanation, however, is an honest account. It acknowledges the challenge, says something like neurodivergent time blindness, but it retains agency. Having a legitimate struggle is absolutely an explanation, but refusing to manage it or mitigate its impact on the people around you quickly turns it into just another excuse.
To help you navigate this, especially if you're dealing with traits like ADHD or autism, here is a highly actionable 4-step accountability formula. First, apologize for the specific behavior. Second, acknowledge the impact it had on the other person. You really need to validate their frustration. Third, explain the challenge without using it as a shield. And fourth, remedy the situation by clearly stating the concrete system you're putting in place to fix it. Doing this shows maturity, it shows care, and it shows a real commitment to growth without alienating your peers.
Zooming out now to part 4, the extreme ownership principle. This brings us to the famous Navy SEAL philosophy of extreme ownership, developed by Jocko Willink and Leif Bobbin. This quote really just hits the nail on the head. Once people stop making excuses, stop blaming others, and take ownership in their lives, they are compelled to take action to solve their problems. Extreme ownership is quite literally the ultimate antidote to that self-handicapping trap we talked about. It means acknowledging that the outcome of any situation is a direct result of your decisions. You own the failure, and therefore, you own the solution.
Let's compare some traditional management pitfalls against this completely no excuses framework. Traditional management often gets bogged down focusing on individual performance, blame, and strict hierarchy, but extreme ownership completely flips the script. It focuses solely on the team's ultimate success. It swaps out excuse-making for absolute accountability and trades reactive panic for proactive problem-solving. A truly effective leader doesn't point fingers when a project goes south. They look in the mirror at their own failure to communicate, train, or resource the team properly.
Which brings us to part 5, fixing workplace friction.
A leader practicing extreme ownership has to aggressively hunt down what we call bad friction. Organizational psychologist Bob Sutton points out a few incredibly toxic habits that just drain teams dry. There's the addition sickness, where we are constantly adding new processes but literally never subtracting the old, outdated ones. There's sham participation, which is when a leader wastes people's time asking for input on a decision that's already been made. A massive trust killer, by the way. And then there's executive magnification, where a leader's passing, offhand comment triggers hundreds of hours of panicked, wasted busy work. These are essentially systemic versions of self-handicapping. They virtually guarantee underachievement.
Sutton offers a really beautiful reframe for leaders here. We see ourselves as trustees of others' time. Time is absolutely not an infinite resource that a leader is just entitled to waste. It is a highly precious commodity. When you schedule a meeting or introduce a clunky new software tool, you must act as a responsible trustee of your team's energy. Bottom line, if you are wasting their time, you are failing your mission.
But hey, remember, not all friction is bad. Good friction is highly intentional. It's making it purposefully difficult to just blindly add a new piece of software to the company's tech stack. It's slowing down a process just enough to force deliberate thought before someone makes a disastrously rapid decision. And on a purely human level, good friction is slowing down to savor those meaningful moments, like a great team lunch or a big victory, rather than just rushing around to cope with the next disaster. Sometimes slowing down actually accelerates your long-term success.
And finally, part 6, taking charge of the outcome.
So let's pull this all together. Here is your inside-out blueprint. First, shine harsh light on your own self-handicapping. Stop building barricades just to protect your ego. Second, actively shift from a fixed mindset that desperately wants to look smart to a growth mindset that hungers to learn. Third, when you inevitably mess up, use that 4-step formula to provide an honest explanation, not a deflection. Fourth, apply extreme ownership to literally everything in your life. You are responsible for your outcomes. And finally, audit your environment to ruthlessly eliminate the bad friction that wastes the precious time of the people around you.
I want to leave you with a thought to really chew on as we wrap up. What is a major obstacle in your life right now? And how will applying the power of yet completely transform your approach to it today? Seriously, think about it. The barrier in front of you right now isn't the end of the road. You just haven't figured out the way over it yet. Own it, learn from it, and take action. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks some incredible growth in your life and your leadership.